Why do I think my book is different than the other books, right? Well, basically, my book is written on a philosophy, what I call leadership, which I believe is a philosophy to change the way management operates in world business. And so it's written from a standpoint of a philosophy that I've developed. And Steve is a perfect candidate to be the model of my philosophy, and plus and things I've also learned from him. So the big advantage I have, I was there. So I was there day to day. I was there to understand the ups and downs of how things operate and how things went. And plus was there to able to give my input to help sort of structure what the philosophy is going to be. So that's a big difference. All the other books were from people who sort of assimilated information and wrote a book about it, but they didn't really have any connection to it. I'm Jay Elliot. My background is I'm from California. I'm a fourth generation Californian. I went to school in California. After college, I took a brief class in computer programming and ended up going to IBM. I worked at IBM for about 9 years in software development, and left IBM, went to work for Intel for about a year and a half. I did not like Intel, so I chose to find something else. And just by accident, I ran into Steve Jobs once in a small restaurant in a little town south of Silicon Valley, and went to work for Apple. Since I left Apple in '87, and since then I've been on my own I've started about 6 startups, doing my own companies. Basically, that's what I do. Basically, what sort of I see lacking in a lot of companies and lacking in the industry in general is that the leaders of those companies don't have what I call a passion for what they're doing. They might be more passionate about their job, but they're not really passionate about what the company is doing or what they're doing. So that's one of the words that really describes the differential between Steve Jobs and some of the other leaders in industry. Secondly, the whole product. The product that when you're building your product, you're building the whole thing and integrating all the pieces into one. What I was talking about in my earlier discussions was, I look at companies like Microsoft or Google. Google has a whole product, which is their search engine, obviously on the internet, but then they've recently been moving into areas of software for mobile phones, and as Microsoft builds software for computers, they don't do the whole product, so they don't have everything controlled from one end to the other, and as a result of it, sometimes things don't integrate well together. And I think that's a huge advantage that Apple has, and plus Apple now owns not only the whole product, but the whole process of the product, which is all the way through their sales stores, and which is a huge advantage. So those are what sort of the major things that I think differentiate them from the others. Secondly, or lastly, the cool part is paying attention to how your product is modeled or how it comes out to be viewed on the other end, and who really views that as being a cool thing or not. As I mentioned earlier, having the when the iPod came out, having the headsets and white cords coming out the ears identified people that had a cool product. And right away you see somebody with a headset and say, wow, that person knows what they're doing. The stores have offered a whole new other element of cool, which is having to be able to display your own products your own way, but do it in a way that's also very design-oriented and very fashionable. So those are what I mean about, that's how those words resonate to me. Well, I think that what's true about Steve has this incredible intensity and passion for what he does, and I think that comes across to the public. He's very open, he speaks openly about certain things. So I think what comes across is the real Steve as far as his day-to-day, how he feels about things going on. I think what the public image, which is not necessarily true, is a part about how he is either hurtful to people, or how he mismanages people, or how he's says things that are wrong. I think things are taken out of context based on my experience, and I think that also I think some people maybe deserve to be told certain things, but I think his public image about sort of his dark side of his life, I feel, is really blown out of proportion. First opinion of Steve was, who is this young kid who thinks he knows what he's talking about? And particularly at the time I met him, I didn't really know much about Apple at all, and so I didn't even know who they were. And so I was shocked that this kid, who was very young and also came across very young, had as much insight into similar ideas I had about the future of the personal computer market. And so that was my impression about who is this guy and is this real or not. Well, Apple's going to be fine. It's going to execute his vision. I believe he's, if I think back in his 2001 speech where he laid out it's called the digital hub, which is there's still completely development of. I believe his vision will be in place for the next years, and I think they will execute the vision. They'll never replace him, obviously, and they won't have that kind of a person, but I think they will execute the vision and operate as a business very well, and based on what the legacy he's left behind. Well, I say young people to me means open. I mean, I believe it's like you look in politics, they say liberal or conservative. Liberal to me means open. Doesn't mean that it really has a different opinion. But I think younger people, young means to me has open, creative thinking. But you could be 96 years old and be young, and that's what the difference is, and that's why if you look at the world today, that's what's changing the world. That's what's changing Libya. That's what's changing Egypt, particularly with now this information we have to connect people and to get information, do what you're going to do. So to me, there's no reason that anybody should be held back by any country system or culture or old thinking, because that's the future, and that's what we have to really generate.